Hour again, China singling out 106 American products for a 25% higher tariff in a trade dispute with the U.S. Ag groups and the markets reacting accordingly yesterday. Many continue to worry about the duties, with how they'll hit the ag economy when the time comes. Farmers already are struggling at the present time, and our Sarah Mock is joining us live from our studios in Washington, D.C. with the very latest. Sarah?
Well, thank you, Mark. We actually got a chance to check in with the White House and the U.S. trade representative today. They have been extremely measured in their response to farmers' concerns about these trade tariffs. We heard from an administration official who said in a statement, quote, "The U.S. stands ready to defend our producers that may be harmed by foreign country retaliation, in particular farmers and ranchers. And we will use all our authority to ensure that we protect and preserve our agricultural interests." Now, the statement went on to defend those tariffs, citing what the administration calls distortive policies, specifically in reference to China's corn, wheat, and rice markets, which the White House claims China is subsidizing at more than $100 billion over what World Trade Organization rules allow. These are not the reasons cited for those $60 billion tariffs announced earlier this week by the White House, but it is an example, the White House says, of just one more way that China is using unfair trade practices that the U.S. just can't stand for any longer. Now, we did see last night the U.S. Trade Representative. That's the agency that announced these tariffs in the first place. They addressed some concerns that China had gone to the WTO to formally challenge U.S. tariffs. They called China's attempt to do that baseless, and also pushed back on those $3 billion tariffs that China has already implemented against U.S. products, including pork, fruit, and nuts. Now, besides those statements, the U.S. Trade Representative, including their new chief ag negotiator, Greg Dowd, have been pretty tight-lipped on these issues, only offering RFD-TV the statement, a similar statement you heard to the one I gave you from the White House a moment ago. But they're looking forward, they say, to just a May 15th hearing coming up and the 6 months of comment period that is about to proceed going forward. Now, of course, we did also hear from Larry Kudlow, the president's chief economic advisor, just yesterday. He did give some assurances that these tariffs and WTO actions are really just the first step in ongoing negotiations. He suggested that these tariffs may never go into effect, and really tried to give both producers and folks throughout the economy, and especially in the markets, some hope. But I think it's fair to say that what we're hearing from the administration is that right now these tariffs and other WTO actions are more posturing than policy. Mark?
Points well made. That's our D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Mock in Washington. Well, China's proposed tariffs still a long way from being implemented. As Sarah mentioned, the U.S. duties aren't set to go into effect for at least 6 months. Analysts say there are a lot of factors that could affect the market in the meantime. China buys more than 60% of soybeans sold on the global market, and analysts say it could purchase nearly 100 million metric tons this year. If it follows through with plans to penalize U.S. soybeans, that leaves Brazil to fill the gap.
In theory, Brazil could meet that entire demand, but that would leave them virtually out of soybeans.
Brazil holds a 45% share of the global export market. The U.S., 40%, and Argentina just 6%.
You cut their yields like we have, that probably takes them off the world market and potentially in a position where they are going to need to import beans to keep their crush facilities running. That opens up a potential market for the U.S. So I think what traders are starting to figure out is this could rejockey where beans are going in the world. It's probably going to reduce demand and probably reduce world exports just because of the uncertainty.
Analysts say China could front-load shipments from the U.S. to avoid tariffs in the future. And for others, it's a chance to buy.
We are seeing some end users come in and take advantage of this opportunity. Certainly, if I was a non-China buyer looking at the price break here versus the firming basis expected in Brazil, I'd be looking at the fire sale going on in the United States.
USDA expects farmers to plant 89 million acres of soybeans this spring, a million more than corn. And while Suderman says China's tariffs could encourage farmers to plant more corn, others aren't so sure.
I think farmers pretty much will have their crop rotation set up for the year, and there could be some minor shifting, but I don't anticipate a lot of changes.
But if China follows through, it could have an impact over the long term. A recent Purdue University study finds 30% tariff could reduce total soybean exports by 40% over several years.
We become the residual supplier, and longer term, if you give this 3 to 5, 6 years to adjust, they're estimating that soybean production in the United States would drop about 17%.
Hertz says Brazil and Argentina could increase acreage in response, tilting the balance of global trade in a way that would be hard to reverse. Now, other areas of the ag industry are also reacting as well. Sarah Mock shares remarks from lawmakers and American Farm Bureau in our next half hour. Now it's time for your Ranch Race Kids photo of the day. Emma,